So imagine sitting in a quiet room, right? You're just repeating a single, kind of seemingly meaningless phrase over and over again. And as a direct, measurable result, your bank account actually grows.
Which, I mean, sounds completely absurd to most people.
Right. Sounds like a total scam. Sounds like, the ultimate late-night infomercial woo-woo magic. But what if the reason those morning affirmations or manifestation mantras have never worked for you is simply a mechanical failure?
A user error, essentially.
Exactly. What if you are completely misunderstanding how to operate your own vocal cords, your nervous system, and your brain?
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters for the modern, rationally trained mind.
Yeah.
We are so heavily conditioned to require visible, immediate physical causality. You push a button, a light turns on.
Yeah.
But when we introduce the concept of localized sound and internal frequency, fundamentally altering external reality, the modern brain just tends to reject the premise entirely. It feels too unmoored from physics.
And that skepticism is exactly why we are unpacking this today. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to explore a science that is incredibly ancient, deeply embedded in human history, and yet profoundly, almost comically misunderstood in our culture today.
We are talking about the actual mechanics of mantras and incantations.
Yes, and we're looking at this through a highly specific, honestly fascinating source. We have a transcript and materials from a practitioner named Osman. He is widely known as the blind Muslim yogi.
Which is a really compelling source precisely because of the sheer volume of his lived experience. I mean, we are talking about a bioenergy healer on a master level.
Right, and we need to be clear about his background right up front. He's an entrepreneur, a yoga and meditation teacher, and he has spent over 5 decades completely immersed in these practices. He attained his first samadhi experience by the age of 19.
19, that's incredibly rare. And he specializes in critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses using telepathic healing capabilities, which he bases on the principles of quantum entanglement.
Yeah, he has studied extensively from the Far East, the Middle East, the West. He focuses heavily on a scientific approach. And we need to set the table for you listening right now because this deep dive is not about vague mysticism.
No, that's
If you're expecting us to talk about, sitting in a drum circle and just radiating good vibes, you are going to be surprised. What Osman's work presents is a highly systematic, almost aggressively mechanical approach to using sound, frequency, and psychological conviction.
And he uses it to alter baseline neural states and consequently physical realities. It completely removes the mystical blame and places the burden of success squarely in the realm of operation.
Which I love.
Right. It treats the human organism like a piece of highly advanced technology that we've simply lost the user manual for.
I really love that framework. It makes me think of trying to log on to a highly secure Wi-Fi network. You might have a piece of paper with the exact correct letters, right? The sacred words of the mantra.
The password.
Exactly. You know the password.
Yeah.
But if your capitalization is wrong, which we can compare to your acoustic technique, or if you type it in perfectly, but you never actually press the enter key, which would be your internal conviction, you simply aren't getting access to the network.
You can type those correct letters 1,000 times, and the screen will just keep flashing access denied.
Yep. And then you walk away telling everyone that the network is a scam.
When in reality, the network is broadcasting at full strength. The server is perfectly functional. It is the user input that is fundamentally flawed. And Osman's material forces us to look at these ancient practices not as magical spells that just wash over a passive recipient, but as precise cognitive technologies.
Technologies that require exact execution. And what grounds this entire theory, before he even gets into the mechanics of sound, is his surprisingly rigid stance on physical biology.
Yeah, that was a really fascinating part of the text. Because right off the bat, Osman lays down a foundational philosophy that you don't usually expect from an energy healer. He explicitly states that his natural-based therapies and energetic practices are strictly complementary.
Complementary and supplementary, never a replacement.
Exactly. They are never a replacement for qualified, licensed medical treatment. He places this massive, non-negotiable emphasis on daily lifestyle habits and the personal responsibility required to manage health challenges.
He essentially says that medicine itself is not a miracle cure without the patient's active participation, let alone energy work.
Right. Which exposes the fallacy that traps so many people in the modern wellness space. People desperately want the esoteric practice to be a bypass for physical discipline.
But let me play devil's advocate here, representing you, the listener.
Hmm.
Isn't there kind of a massive paradox in that worldview? I mean, if someone truly has access to ancient sciences and higher frequency healing modalities that can literally alter reality,
Why go to a doctor?
yeah, why are they the very first ones telling you to make sure you go to a Western doctor and watch your diet? Shouldn't a high-frequency energetic intervention just easily override a bad diet or heal a broken bone? Why does the biology still matter so much?
Well, because the energy isn't superior in the sense that it exists separately from the biology. It requires the biology as a conductive medium. Think of the human body as the physical hardware. It's the motherboard of a highly complex supercomputer.
Okay, I'm with you.
The mantras, the energy work, the psychological recalibration, that is the software upgrade. You can have the most advanced, pristine software code in the universe. But if you try to install it on a computer that has a melted motherboard, frayed wiring, and a dying battery,
The software just crashes.
it cannot run. It cannot take root. The physical vessel is the anchor for the energetic frequency. If that vessel is being actively degraded through poor lifestyle habits, chronic sleep deprivation, terrible nutrition, or ignoring acute medical conditions, the system is in a constant state of biological panic.
It's just dedicating all its resources to basic survival.
Exactly. This actually reminds me of a really interesting conversation on the Huberman Lab podcast. Andrew Huberman had Dr. David Spiegel on, talking about clinical hypnosis and the mind-body connection.
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
And Dr. Spiegel made a very similar point about how shifting internal states can radically alter pain perception and recovery, but you still have to set the bone, you still have to treat the tissue. The mental state optimizes the physical healing, but it doesn't replace the physical laws of the body.
That perfectly aligns with Osman's approach. By insisting on medical and lifestyle pragmatism, he completely demystifies the practice. He anchors it in the harsh reality of thermodynamics and biology, rather than offering this, escapist fantasy where you can just chant your problems away
Yeah.
while treating your body like a dumpster.
So no fairy godmothers here. The baseline hardware has to be stable.
Right. But if the hardware is stable, how do we actually program the software? Because Osman makes a very sharp distinction here between two concepts that our culture constantly misuses. For most of us, if you hear the words mantra and tantra, it all just gets lumped together as generic yoga terminology.
But he draws a very hard mechanical line between them. And understanding that line is critical to understanding the mechanism of action. So let's look at the etymology and the functional definition. The word mantra comes from two Sanskrit roots. Manas, meaning mind, and tra, meaning tool or vehicle.
Literally a tool for the mind.
Exactly. Osman defines it as a specific group of sounds that create a targeted energetic frequency. They are designed to reverberate in a highly disciplined, controlled manner to bring about a localized result in one's own psychology and their immediate physical environment.
So it's a tool you operate internally.
Yes. Whereas Tantra, as described in this specific text, is entirely different. He describes tantric practices as dealing with magic. Specifically, controlling higher frequency external entities to carry out tasks, extracting information from them to predict the future, and securing supernatural protection.
So if mantra is acoustic engineering, Tantra, at least in this specific context, is closer to diplomatic negotiation with unseen forces.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's use an analogy to make this concrete for the listener. Tantra, based on his definition, sounds like hiring a mysterious, potentially dangerous subcontractor to build a house for you. You don't know their methods, they bring their own crew, and the power dynamic is external.
You're relying on a third party?
Right. But mantra is going to the hardware store, buying the lumber, and learning to wield the acoustic and psychological tools to build the house yourself.
That is a brilliant distinction. With the subcontractor, you are introducing external variables, which carries immense risk and arguably karmic debts. You don't control the process. With the mantra, you are the prime mover. It is a self-contained system.
And because it is a self-contained system, it is fundamentally neutral.
Neutrality is key here.
Okay, let's put that neutrality under a microscope, because this is where the source material genuinely shocked me. When Osman lists the practical goals associated with mantras, he doesn't just list achieving inner peace or spiritual nirvana.
No, he gets very practical.
He lists acquiring wealth. He lists protection from negative energy. He lists gaining popularity. And then there was one application that made me stop reading entirely. He lists improving your quote-unquote manipulative capacity to win arguments, manipulate people into your way of thinking, and force outcomes in your favor.
It really strips away all the romanticism, doesn't it?
It does. And honestly, I have to push back on this because that sounds like dark psychology. We have this sanitized, deeply reverent image of ancient Eastern practices as inherently pure and moral. Monks meditating on mountaintops for world peace.
Right, the Western projection.
Exactly. Yeah. But here's an expert with 50 years of experience casually stating, yes, there is a specific acoustic frequency you can reverberate that will make you significantly better at manipulating other human beings. How is that any different from a sleazy sales tactic?
Well, it isn't different in its outcome. And that is precisely the point that makes modern audiences uncomfortable. We want spiritual tools to have a built-in moral compass. We want to believe that the universe will only allow these tools to work if your intentions are pure.
Right.
But Osman's framework, and really the teachings of figures like Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, force us to confront a colder reality. Physics does not care about human morality. Vivekananda talked extensively about how concentration of the mind is a power, and like any power, it can be used for good or ill.
Like a line of code. It doesn't care if it's running a hospital's life support database or a hacker's ransomware.
Precisely. A chemical reaction will occur whether you are using it to synthesize a life-saving drug or a lethal poison. Sound, frequency, and acoustic resonance are mechanical laws of the universe. They are entirely neutral.
It's agnostic power.
Yes. The inclusion of manipulation and winning arguments in his list proves that these ancient sciences are not fairy tales for the righteous. They are highly effective algorithms for human behavior. You can use them for the highest pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, or you can use them to ruthlessly close a corporate merger. The mantra will execute the code regardless.
Which is terrifying, but also incredibly empowering. It means the tool actually works. But that naturally begs the most critical question of this entire deep dive. Knowing that a tool is designed to build a house is one thing. Understanding how the hammer actually drives the nail is another.
Mechanism of action.
Right. I am asking this for you, the listener. How exactly does a mere sound translate into tangible external reality? I can understand listening to ocean waves and my heart rate dropping. That's basic biology. But how does a sound wave bouncing around inside my skull somehow translate into my bank account growing, or me suddenly becoming the most persuasive person in a boardroom?
To understand that, we have to completely break down the causal chain of reverberation in reality, and we have to abandon the magical thinking that the sound wave physically materializes a stack of $100 bills on your kitchen table.
So no manifesting money out of thin air.
No. Osman relies on highly authentic ancient sources that have practiced this successfully for thousands of years, but the mechanism is entirely psychological and neurological. It starts with your baseline frequency.
Define baseline frequency in this context.
Well, every single day you operate from a default neurological state, a baseline. For the vast majority of modern people, that baseline is a subtle cocktail of low-grade anxieties, deep-seated insecurities, micro-hesitations, and rigidly enforced habitual thought patterns.
If I'm being honest, my default baseline is a mild panic about my email inbox and a general sense of not having enough time.
And that mild panic is not just a feeling. It is a physiological and behavioral cage. It dictates your posture. It dictates the tension in your vocal cords, making your voice slightly higher and thinner. It dictates the words you choose in a negotiation. And crucially, it heavily dictates your reticular activating system. That's the part of your brain responsible for filtering the billions of bits of sensory data around you.
So my brain is actively filtering the world to prove my panic right.
Exactly. You are neurologically tuned to perceive threats, obstacles, and scarcity. Now, imagine introducing a highly disciplined, controlled reverberation, a specific mantra into that system.
Okay.
A mantra designed over thousands of years to generate a frequency of absolute abundance or unshakable dominance.
Oh.
Through rigorous, sustained repetition, that acoustic wave begins to physically entrain your brainwaves.
It overwrites the code.
Yes. It begins to overwrite the neural pathways of anxiety. It chemically alters your state, instilling a deep cellular confidence and sharpening your focus to a razor's edge. This is something Mo Gaudat talked about extensively on Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO podcast.
Oh, I remember that one.
Mo Gaudat describes the brain literally as a computer that just runs whatever code you feed it. If you feed it the code of anxiety, it runs anxiety. If you feed it a repetitive, structured code of abundance, like a mantra, it has no choice but to run that new program.
Okay, so the internal state changes. My hardware is running a different operating system. I feel different. But the bank account is still empty.
But the bank account doesn't stay empty because behavior is instantaneous. The moment your internal state changes, your physical interface with reality changes. You walk into that boardroom, and your posture is entirely different.
You're walking differently.
Your vocal pitch drops and becomes resonant, which evolutionary psychology tells us commands immediate biological respect from other humans. You maintain unbreakable eye contact. You don't hedge your words.
That's the manipulative capacity he mentioned.
Yes. Because you are no longer projecting anxiety, people instinctively trust you more. They are easily swayed by your arguments. And on perceptual level, because your reticular activating system is no longer blinding you with panic, you suddenly notice the micro-expressions of the person across the table.
So you see things you wouldn't have seen.
Exactly. You see an angle for a deal that was invisible to you yesterday. You recognize a massive financial opportunity that you previously would have walked right past.
That is wild. The wealth or the opportunity for it was literally always sitting right there in the room with me.
Yeah.
I was just functionally blind to it because my internal frequency was tuned to the wrong channel.
Exactly. The internal sound rewires your neural pathways. Those new neural pathways instantaneously rewire your physical behavior and perception, and your new behavior forcefully bends external reality to your will. The sound is simply the first domino that tips the entire chain of human action.
This reminds me so much of Yogananda's writings in Autobiography of a Yogi. He talks constantly about the vibratory nature of the universe, how changing the internal vibration literally rearranges the external atoms of your life experience.
Yes, Yogananda was instrumental in bringing that scientific framing of vibration to the West.
That is, self-directed neuroplasticity weaponized through acoustic resonance. It makes total logical sense. But if the causal chain is that clear, and these tools are historically proven to be this powerful, we have a massive problem.
We do.
Why is almost everyone who tries this today completely failing? If I log on to social media, I see millions of people repeating daily mantras, and the vast majority of them are still broke, stressed, and miserable.
Well, Osman is brutally honest in the source text about this. He points out that these practices only yield results for a microscopic fraction of a percentage of modern people.
And he breaks down why, right?
He is unsparing in his diagnosis of this failure. He breaks it down into 3 categorical missing components, which we could call the 3 pillars of failure. Number 1, wrong technique, literally mispronouncing the acoustic code. Number 2, lack of discipline, specifically the consistency of practice and failing to hit the required repetition count.
And the third.
Number 3, lack of expertise or proper initiation.
Let's talk about that second pillar, the required repetition count, because the sheer volume of labor he describes is staggering. Osman notes that completing the daily required count for just a single mantra can take 3 hours.
3 hours of sustained, unbroken acoustic repetition.
And he gives a compounding example. He says if you want to target 4 different goals, say wealth, protection, popularity, and spiritual evolution, you're looking at 6 to 7 hours of daily, rigorous practice.
Which absolutely shatters the modern illusion of what a spiritual practice actually is.
I have to relate this to the modern fitness industry, because the parallel is just too perfect. People read a translated mantra on a blog, they sit cross-legged on a yoga mat, they chant it for 5 minutes before their morning coffee while checking their phone.
And then they complain that the universe is broken because they aren't rich yet.
Yes, it is exactly like a guy walking into a gym, picking up a 5-pound dumbbell, doing a single bicep curl, staring in the mirror, and then writing a furious review online that the gym is a scam because he doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It perfectly exposes the cognitive dissonance of the modern mind. We have this deep, ravenous desire for the results of the ancients. We want the unshakable peace, the profound clarity, the manifestation power, but we feel completely entitled to it without the grueling monastic devotion that the ancients actually traded for it.
We want drive-through enlightenment.
Exactly. Osman's text frames this level of spirituality not as a quick magic trick, but as a punishing endurance event requiring immense, almost athletic cognitive labor.
And he knows what he's talking about. The source notes that in certain stages of his life, Osman engaged in intensive, rigorous practice for up to 18 hours a day.
18 hours.
And currently, even after 50 years, he is practicing a minimum of 8 to 10 hours a day just as he says, sharpening the sword.
It reminds me of the Mel Robbins podcast, actually. She frequently has Dr. Joe Dispenza on to talk about rewiring the brain. And the core message is always about the reps. You can't just think a positive thought once. You have to actively, aggressively rehearse the new state of being until it becomes neurologically hardwired.
Right, it's about the volume of repetitions.
Yes. The brain requires time and sustained pressure to physically alter its structure. Osman is just applying that same neurological reality to ancient acoustics.
But let's be realistic here, 6 to 7 hours a day. I mean, unless you were literally living in a cave in the Himalayas or you are independently wealthy and have zero responsibilities, nobody in the modern working world has 7 hours a day to sit around chanting.
No, of course not.
Osman is an entrepreneur himself. He knows this. So is the practice effectively dead for the average person? Is this technology just locked away behind an impossible time wall?
According to Osman, no, it is not inaccessible. But bypassing that time requirement requires a leap into a completely different tier of human cognition. He introduces what is essentially a highly advanced strategic cheat code to compress time.
And this is where the text gets incredibly fascinating. It blends ancient science with what sounds almost like theoretical physics.
Yeah.
He says there is a strategy where a practice that normally takes 3 brutal hours can be flawlessly executed in just 20 minutes.
Yes.
And crucially, and this is the most important part, he states this can be done without compromising the pronunciation or the integrity of the mantra in any way.
Which, if you think about it strictly in terms of vocal mechanics, sounds physically impossible. I mean, if a multisyllable word takes 1 second to properly articulate, and the protocol demands 10,000 repetitions to achieve the neurological shift, you cannot mathematically compress that into 20 minutes using your mouth.
Right, if you try to speak it faster, it just degrades into a blurry, ineffective noise.
The acoustic code is corrupted. The capitalization on the password is wrong, to use your Wi-Fi analogy.
So how is he claiming this is possible? You can't just hit fast forward on your vocal cords?
Osman states it is achieved by accessing the higher capacities of the human brain and mind, tapping into what he explicitly calls quantum levels, and utilizing advanced yoga sciences to awaken dormant, higher frequency cognitive capacities.
Okay, stop right there. Quantum levels is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in wellness circles, and it's often used to mask a lack of actual science.
Oh, absolutely.
So what does it mechanically mean to compress time in the mind? How does the brain actually do this?
Let's look at it through the lens of neuroscience and information processing speeds. Your conscious waking state, which is governed by beta brainwaves, processes information serially.
Meaning one at a time.
Right. One piece of data at a time, moving at the speed of your physical sensory organs. It is slow. It takes 3 hours to physically vocalize the sound, but your subconscious mind operates entirely differently. It processes information in parallel, handling millions of data points simultaneously.
Can you give me a real-world example of that parallel speed?
The perfect example is REM sleep. You can experience a complex, vivid dream that subjectively feels like it spans several days. You have long conversations, you travel to different locations, you experience intense emotional arcs.
So I've had those.
But if we measure your brain activity, that entire REM cycle may have only lasted 12 minutes in physical waking time. Thought, when detached from the physical constraints of the vocal cords and the waking beta wave state, moves exponentially faster than the speed of physical sound.
Oh, wow. So if you can drop your brain into that specific theta or delta state while remaining conscious, you can run a repetition internally at the speed of thought. Yeah. It's like upgrading your internet hardware. Going from a 3-hour physical chant to a 20-minute internal quantum process is exactly like upgrading from a 1990s dial-up modem to a modern fiber optic connection.
That is a perfect analogy.
The amount of data, the sheer required number of repetitions is identical. You aren't cutting corners on the file size. But the bandwidth of the hardware allows the download to execute in 20 minutes instead of 3 hours.
That is the exact mechanism. The integrity of the data is perfectly maintained, but the processing speed is exponentially magnified. Deepak Chopra talked about this exact concept of quantum processing and healing on the Ranveer Show podcast with Beer Biceps.
Oh, interesting.
Chopra was explaining how, at a quantum biological level, the body and mind can communicate non-locally and process information at speeds that defy classical physics. And Osman is applying this specifically to acoustic repetition. It also explains his telepathic healing capabilities.
Right, because if you can process intention and frequency at a quantum parallel level, you aren't bound by local space and time, which explains how he approaches critical care and recovery.
Exactly. However, Osman makes a very stark point here. This fiber optic bandwidth is not a normal default human capacity. You don't just wake up one Tuesday and decide to process information at a quantum subconscious level. It is a dormant capacity that must be awakened and meticulously developed.
Which brings us to a massive, frustrating roadblock. Because even if I perfectly understand the theory of this fiber optic upgrade, I can't just install it myself.
No, you can't.
I can't watch a YouTube tutorial, close my eyes, and suddenly possess quantum time compression. According to Osman's text, you actually need a secondary human being to turn the power on for you.
Yes. The concept of initiation and the economics of spiritual transmission, this fundamentally challenges our modern relationship with information.
Osman issues a very stark warning about the DIY approach here. He says that reading a mantra from a book or finding it online is essentially useless for generating substantive, reality-altering results. To get the actual power, you must receive the mantra from a living practitioner who actively possesses that power.
So they can transmit the mantra together with the energy.
Right. And he notes that while many people claim to offer this initiation, the vast majority possess only minimal power, which does absolutely nothing for the student.
This is deeply frustrating for the modern ego to accept. I mean, we live in the ultimate information age. We are deeply conditioned to believe that access to data equates to mastery of the subject.
If I can download the PDF of the ancient text, I possess the ancient secret.
Right. If I read the medical journal, I understand the surgery. But Osman's framework forces us back into the ancient, strict master-apprentice model.
It feels deeply unfair. All the knowledge in the world is basically useless unless you manage to find a rare, qualified master to essentially authorize your access. It's like having the blueprint to a nuclear reactor but not being allowed to buy uranium.
That's very true.
What exactly is this transmission he's talking about? Is it just a psychological permission slip, or is it a physical event?
It is best understood through the physics of sympathetic resonance. Imagine a massive, heavy tuning fork resting on a table. It is perfectly forged, technically capable of vibrating at a highly specific frequency, let's say an A minor that shatters glass.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But sitting there, it is just silent, inert metal. You can read a book about how it vibrates, you can know everything about its atomic structure, but until it is physically struck by another object that is already violently vibrating at that exact frequency, it will never make a sound.
So the master is the active vibrating source.
Precisely. A true master is someone who has put in the tens of thousands of grueling hours, the decades of athletic spiritual discipline, to permanently alter their own neurological and energetic baseline. They embody the frequency.
Wow.
When they initiate a student, they aren't just giving them the phonetic pronunciation, they are striking the student's dormant internal tuning fork with their own active, massive vibration. They are bridging the gap. It is a living, energetic state passed from human nervous system to human nervous system, not from ink to eyeball.
That completely redefines the value of a teacher. It's not about information transfer. It's about state transfer.
Exactly. Rick Archer actually explored this heavily on his Buddha at the Gas Pump podcast. He interviewed Dr. Bonnie Greenwell, who is an expert on Kundalini awakenings.
Oh, I've heard of her work.
And she, along with classical teachings from people like Gopi Krishna, emphasizes that awakening these dormant neural pathways without proper transmission or preparation is either impossible or, if forced, highly dangerous. The transmission from a qualified source acts as both the catalyst and the safety mechanism.
That makes a lot of sense. And as a quick practical note for you listening, Osman is someone who has studied this deeply for 50 years and possesses a vast experiential knowledge of this exact space.
And he offers a lot of this knowledge publicly.
He does. The source notes that his mission is to encourage as many people into a scientific, result-based, and simplified methodology. So he offers extensive advice and techniques on yoga and meditation through his YouTube channel as a completely free service.
Which is incredibly generous given the depth of the science.
Yeah, he says he doesn't withhold information on his YouTube channels. But for those looking for deeper personalized resources, or to explore how these protocols are actively applied one-on-one, you can visit his website at yogawellness7a6.com.
And that's where he has his Patreon.
Right. Through the website, you can access his Patreon channel for paid live daily video lessons, one-to-one consultations, and group talks. And we should be clear, his one-on-one energy healing is an exclusive premium service. Because of his high success rate and the immense energy required, the treatments are not inexpensive.
Which makes sense given the 50 years of 18-hour days he put in to become the vibrating tuning fork.
Exactly. You can also find his audio content by searching for his channel name, The Blind Muslim Yogi, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure to follow the channel if you use those platforms.
And his personal background, the lens through which he views all of this, adds a really fascinating layer of credibility and global synthesis, which leads us to the ultimate climax of his philosophy.
Yes, let's look at who is actually delivering this profound mechanical breakdown. The text highlights Osman's personal background to give context. He's an entrepreneur in his late 50s. He is a Muslim evident by his name and the 786 numbering in his platforms, which is a highly significant numerical representation in Islamic culture.
Right.
And he specifically notes that his personal practice involves Islamic incantations recommended by the Prophet for protection and easing the friction of life.
But critically, he does not gatekeep the physics behind a single religious dogma.
Not at all. And this is so refreshing. He explicitly observes that these sciences of acoustic incantation and psychological recalibration exist across all major traditions. He points to Christian sciences, Islamic sciences, Buddhist sciences, and the Vedic traditions of India, like the teachings of Swami Sivananda from the Divine Life Society.
It is a remarkably unified, post-dogmatic view of global spiritual mechanics. It strips away the tribalism and focuses purely on the underlying physics of human belief and sound. Lewis Howes touched on this ancient universality on the School of Greatness podcast when he had Sadhguru on, discussing how yoga isn't a belief system, but a technology for well-being.
Exactly. But here is the absolute climax of the source material. This is the moment that completely derailed my train of thought when I first read it. After 50 years of intense, grueling practice, Osman states that he has never come across a mantra that didn't work if it was executed correctly.
A 100% success rate, provided the mechanical operation is flawless.
Yes, but the real bombshell goes infinitely deeper than that. He claims that even completely made-up, self-created incantations, words that have absolutely no historical lineage, no ancient Sanskrit roots, no secret transmission, will definitively work to alter reality if they repeated long enough and with absolute unbreakable conviction.
That single statement is the cornerstone of his entire 50-year philosophy.
I need to push back on this, though, because it feels like it unravels everything we just talked about. If a completely made-up word, if I just invent a gibberish word right now, let's say Zoltar, and I repeat it,
Right.
if that works just as well to generate wealth or confidence as an ancient sacred phrase, doesn't that render all the ancient sounds entirely irrelevant? Why spend decades looking for a master to transmit on highly specific acoustic frequency to your tuning fork if you can just invent your own frequency from scratch?
It is a brilliant paradox, but it doesn't render the ancient sounds irrelevant. It places them in their precise technological context. The ancient sounds, the ones developed and guarded over thousands of years, are highly optimized aerodynamic pathways.
Okay, so they're just more efficient.
Exactly. They are the path of least neurological resistance. They have been honed by millions of human nervous systems to bypass the critical faculties of the brain efficiently. It is like taking a perfectly paved multi-lane highway to your destination.
A superhighway for the mind.
A made-up gibberish mantra, on the other hand, is like hacking your way through a dense, uncharted jungle with a dull machete. It requires vastly more energy. It is brutal, inefficient work.
I see.
However, what Osman is revealing is the most profound truth of the human condition. The ultimate, non-negotiable engine of reality shifting isn't the acoustic geometry of the sound itself. It is human conviction, the absolute cellular certainty of the practitioner, fueled by relentless repetition.
So the human mind is the actual magic wand. The mantra is just the hand holding it.
Exactly. And this is backed up by everything we are currently learning in modern neurochemistry regarding the placebo effect and the biology of belief. If a patient believes a sugar pill will cure them, their brain literally manufactures the specific neurochemicals required to alter their physiological state.
The sugar pill didn't do it.
The conviction did. If conviction, absolute, terrifying certainty driven by repetition, can force a made-up sound to rewire your neurology and alter your physical environment, then the power was never external to begin with. Rainn Wilson and Tony Robbins talked about this exact physiological certainty on the Soul Boom podcast. Robbins teaches that you can completely change your life just by radically altering your physical and emotional state, which is pure conviction.
Or look at the Joe Rogan podcast with Wim Hof. Wim Hof literally proved in a clinical setting that through deep, repetitive breathing and absolute conviction, humans can consciously control their autonomic nervous system and immune response.
Exactly. The universe isn't granting your wish. You are hacking your own hardware. The ancient sciences are simply the user manuals for a machine you already own. It democratizes the potential entirely.
Why does this matter to you listening right now? Why should you care about this as you commute to work or fold your laundry? Because it means the power to alter your psychological baseline, to completely shift from chronic anxiety to magnetic confidence, to recognize wealth, to command a room.
That power is native to your biology.
It is accessible right now, provided you are willing to pay the massive toll of ironclad discipline and absolute conviction required to wield it.
The potential is democratic, but the price of admission is incredibly steep.
What a phenomenal journey today. Let's briefly retrace our steps. We started by looking at the harsh, grounded reality that energy work is a software supplement, not an excuse to ignore your physical hardware. We broke down the vital mechanical difference between Tantra's reliance on external forces and Mantra's internal acoustic engineering. We uncovered the terrifying reality of the multi-hour daily physical requirements that the ancients actually practiced.
We then explored the neuroscience of compressing that time by shifting from waking beta wave processing to quantum subconscious parallel processing.
And we examined the physics of energetic transmission through the tuning fork of a master practitioner. And finally, the stunning realization that while ancient sounds are optimized highways, raw human conviction is the true engine that drives the vehicle.
Absolutely brilliant synthesis.
And as a final reminder, if you want to explore the source of today's deep dive and see how these protocols are applied by someone with half a century of experience, you can find Osman's work, his free YouTube videos, and his Patreon resources at yogawellness786.com. And be sure to follow the Blind Muscle Yogi on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
It's a mandatory study for anyone interested in the true mechanics of human potential.
It really is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a brand new, somewhat uncomfortable question to ponder on your own today. We just established, based on 50 years of rigorous observation, that repeating any phrase with deep conviction and high frequency will successfully alter your reality and rewire your psychology.
Any phrase.
So I want you to think about the casual, throwaway sentences you repeat to yourself every single day. The things you mutter automatically when you drop your keys or look in the mirror or check your bank account. I'm always late. I can never catch a break. I'm so exhausted. I'm terrible with money. Are you at this exact moment accidentally chanting a highly effective, deeply negative mantra?
If conviction dictates reality, that is a terrifying thought.
It is. Because if your daily unconscious conviction is currently building a neurological reality you hate, what would happen if you simply decided to change the words today?